A reading from Matthew. When Jesus came into the district of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, "Who do people say that the Son of Man is?" And they said, "Some say John the Baptist, but others Elijah, and still others Jeremiah or one of the prophets." He said to them, "But who do you say that I am?" Simon Peter answered, "You are the Messiah, the Son of the living God." And Jesus answered him, "Blessed are you, Simon, son of Jonah, for flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but my Father in heaven. And I tell you, you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not prevail against it. I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven, and whatever you bind on this earth will be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on this earth will be loosed in heaven." Then he sternly ordered the disciples not to tell anyone that he was the Messiah. The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
Good morning, everyone. All of us have favorite Bible verses. They're favorites of ours because they have a way of touching our souls at a deep level. They connect us to the fundamental and often unfulfilled longings we have. Longings for a life filled with purpose and meaning, or for greater peace in our hearts. A particular verse may quicken our desire to live more fully into our true and best selves, or may tap into a longing for life-giving relationships with other people, or perhaps to a right relationship with God. Favorite verses have a way of expressing deep truth to us, and they can re-energize aspects of our faith journey, and often in moments when we need it most. I remember a woman in the Lutheran parish I served on the Western Slope. Her favorite Bible verse was, as it is for many of us, from Romans 8, verse 28. "All things work together for good for those who love God." And this gal would occasionally quote that verse to me when congregational life became difficult for some reason. It was meant to be a reminder that amidst the trials and tribulations of daily life, God is still in charge. And that if one's walk with the Lord remains a faithful one, even difficult times will turn out to be opportunities for new personal growth and for a more mature faith. All things work together for the good of those who love God. What reassurance that can be for us when we try to make sense of the events of any given day or situation. For me, the first two verses in today's reading from Romans chapter 12 have long been kind of go-to verses for me. And they help my walk with the Lord keep a good focus, a right focus. And their place in chapter 12 is an interesting one. The first 11 chapters of Paul is where he makes the case for the world's need for redemption. He speaks to the deadly power of sin in the lives of both Jews and Gentiles, the role of law and grace and righteousness won for us by Christ are explained, occasionally in excruciating detail. Lots of heavy, critical, important theology is laid out before us in those first 11 chapters. But then, starting in chapter 12, Paul shifts from theology to the practical. If faithfully keeping the law and doing countless good works, important as both are, cannot in the end save our souls, and only God's grace can, a profound gift given to us thanks to Christ's self-offering on the cross. If all that's true, then what should our day-to-day lives look like in response to that truth? In chapter 12, Paul lays out that response, or begins to lay out that response, and he begins with what someone said, a therefore statement. I appeal to you, therefore, brothers and sisters, therefore, because of all I've said before, I appeal to you by the mercies of God to present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, which is your spiritual worship. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your minds, so that you may discern what the will of God is and what is good and acceptable and perfect. I find those verses to be a kind of roadmap for the spiritual journey. And two phrases in those verses have always stood out to me in particular. And the first one is, present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God. To sacrifice, as we all know, is to be willing to let go of one's preferences and desires for the sake of another person's well-being. Loving parents, those in good marriages and friendships, know in spades that sacrifice for the sake of the other is what it's all about, and is what brings beauty and abundant life to those relationships. And they know too the costly nature of sacrifice. Not getting one's own way is rarely easy to accept. A living sacrifice is a sacrifice that is ongoing. It's alive. It continues on. It's not a once and done sort of thing, but rather a way of being in the world, a lifestyle choice we consciously make over and over again. And so to be a living sacrifice will include countless moments of self-offering for the good of others, in countless different ways, day after day, and in countless different situations. As sacrifice was the essence of Christ's life, so too is it to be ours as we go about our lives filled with different callings, different responsibilities, different situations, different relationships. The current COVID pandemic continues to reveal to the world, and often in heartbreaking ways, what a living and costly sacrifice looks like, perhaps in a way we haven't really seen before. Healthcare workers, grocery store clerks, bus drivers, postal workers, and countless others in the service industries. Their stories move us every day if we watch the news. Their lives are at risk every day, and they choose to do that. The pandemic has also made it clear for all to see what a life looks like when a person is unwilling to take seriously the needs of others. And I think the contrast is stark and frankly shocking to me. The arrogance and the selfishness that abounds in some places. So for me, the words living sacrifice always serve as a succinct reminder of the sort of person I know I'm called to be. And I treasure them for that, although they're rarely easy to live out. And the second verse in chapter 12 of Romans is equally helpful to me. It begins by Paul saying, do not be conformed to this world. That is, don't live an unexamined life. Don't unthinkingly swallow hook, line, and sinker the values of a secular world, and then allow those values to set our priorities and mold our viewpoints. Rather, make an effort to evaluate them for their true worth. is bigger really always better? We need to ask. How much wealth do I really need? What is true wealth? Is it better to have the attitude I need and I want, or to have an attitude that says I have, I can give? And how we answer to those sorts of questions will end up producing startlingly different life outcomes as we move through life. The ways of the world are seductively attractive and will conform our lives to them unless we consciously choose to go in a different direction. I think it's important to say that there are many good people around whose lives are predominantly guided by secular values. We meet them all the time, friendly folks. But those values won't enable them to experience their truest and most satisfying selves. Selves that have been made in the image of God, but need to be grown into with the help of God's grace. So I think someone once described the Christian faith as making good people, great people, outstanding people. To enable that growing process, Paul then encouraged us to be transformed by the renewing of our minds. Be transformed by the renewing of one's mind. That is, give permission to the Holy Spirit, God's presence already within us, to influence and thereby reshape how we think about and how we perceive the world around us. Allow the Spirit to reset the eyes of our minds, so to speak, so that more and more we're able to see people in the world around us as God sees them and sees the world. Paul urges us to be open to having one's decision process changed so that it becomes increasingly reflective of how Christ himself would make a decision. Be transformed by the renewing of our minds. I'm reminded of Paul's letter to the Philippians where he says, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lowly, whatever is gracious, if there is any excellence, if there is anything worthy of praise, think about those things. A truly renewed mind will be inclined to do just that. With a renewed mind, our thinking more aligned with that of Christ himself, we'll be able then, as Paul says, and this is, I think, a really wonderful verse that I love, we'll be able then, as Paul says, to discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. I think it's safe to say that all of us struggle at times to know God's will for our lives at any given moment. Should I take this job? Look for another one? Is this the right person to marry? In these COVID times, parents are having to make very tough decisions about their children's education and their own work lives. I can't even imagine what it must be like to be a school administrator, trying to make good decisions for the faculty and students. And college students are having to make potentially life-changing decisions, sorting through the pluses and minuses of which, how to go forward in these months. And for many people, there are very consequential medical decisions that need to be made. What is the right one to make? What is the best direction to go? That list could obviously go on and on. I am powerfully attracted and encouraged by the idea that it is possible, with the help of a renewed mind, to discover to some meaningful degree what God's will is for me in a particular situation when life gets particularly complicated or confusing. How good it is to be able to say to oneself, you know, I think I understand now. I think I understand where God is pointing me and how I need to go forward in life in the most faithful way. That's a good feeling to have. We may not know exactly, but we have a really strong hunch that, I think the Spirit's leading me this way. And so a renewed mind makes that possible. Favorite Bible verses are favorites for a reason. They're ever faithful guardrails for our faith journey, and they remind us of things that are true about God, true about ourselves, and about the kind of life-giving relationship He wants each of us to have with Him and with others and with ourselves. For all of us, favorite verses always inspire, they always encourage. St. Paul's words to the Romans today include two of my favorites, and I commend them to you. I appeal to you, therefore, brothers and sisters, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, which is your spiritual worship. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your minds, so that you may discern what the will of God and what is good and acceptable and perfect. Amen.
Amen. Thanks, Father Steve.
Welcome.
As I'm getting the screen back up, I'm remembering our last celebration, of course, on a Sunday before we went into isolation was the 40th anniversary of Steve's ordination. That was such a joy. And I'm guessing you never took a class in seminary about how to preach with Chris sitting behind you in your study into a TV screen. So we're grateful for you, Steve, in so many ways. So I have a few announcements, and then Senior Warden Val Patterson has some words. So we've started to get some cans of Lysol and other killing spray, so keep them coming. We're labeling with your name and giving thanks for you when we use them around the building. It is now time. You'll see it's on our webpage, and it'll be in the weekly email again tomorrow. Sign up for small groups. Give one or two a try, see what might work for you to find an anchor during the week. We're doing a soft start, so some will start meeting or just meeting each other this week. Some require some reading and the obtaining of a book. So please do that and find a way to connect with a smaller group. I'm finding that really matters when our Sunday worship is good and also big, like it is here. We are gathering some information. We want to check in with you again as a vestry and a COVID-19 working committee. So the link to the survey is here. I bet you anything someone will put it into the chat box. And then I have a couple of announcements. One I'm really excited about. Meg Holliday, who read our first lesson from Romans, is presently in Duluth, Minnesota. This week, she's going to be coming to Colorado and joining us in our household. Meg was evacuated from the Peace Corps in Ghana in March and is figuring out next steps. And I need help with school. I'm not a very good, well, I wasn't a very good third grade teacher. I'll find out this week if I'm a good fourth grade teacher, but I have a hunch. So I need some help from Meg. I'm really excited that she's coming to join us for a while. And so pray for safe travels for Meg. Meg this week, please. She arrives next Saturday. Here's Jackie. He's already doing school. He's already doing school online. And now I'm going to flip over to Senior Warden Val Patterson, and he's got some words.
Good morning. I'd like to give an update from the wardens following cancellation of the university's fall sports schedule. No football parking and the reduction of daily parking revenue is a substantial loss. Our ongoing financial stability is seriously challenged, and we need everyone to support us as they are able. However, we are not in crisis mode. Our ability to respond to this reality has been enabled by many years of your faithful generosity and the thoughtful leadership of Mother Mary Kate and parish leaders past and present. We plan to operate as we have through this year and into next. Our budget will certainly look different for a couple of years, but as I said, this is not a crisis. It is our puzzle to solve together. Thank you for continuing, and in many cases, increasing your giving to the church. And thank you for demonstrating that we are a community of faith, love, commitment to each other, and to the future. Onward.
Onward indeed. Thanks, Val. Our finance committee met on Friday. We'll meet again in a couple of weeks. And I'm happy to report that we had a joyful, thoughtful, life-giving meeting. So many thanks to those folks. Now, get ready to unmute your microphone. You should be able to do that. May the peace of the Lord be always with you.
And also with thy spirit.
And with thy spirit.
And with thy
And
spirit.
also with you.
Peace, everybody.
Hi, everybody.
Peace,
Everybody.
Peace,
Carol, peace, Jane,
peace.
Harvey, and Troy, and Carrie.
Jackie, say peace. Hi. Good morning, Jackie.
Kim,
Say good morning to
peace,
you.
Donna, and
Say good morning.
peace,
Good morning.
peace,
Good morning,
Jackie.
We're all saying hi to you. Yeah.
Good to see everybody.
Sure.
And
Peace, Leanne.
Peace, peace, Molly and Candace.
yes, Robin.
Everyone was muted then, including me. I love democracy. If you're wanting the new address, remember we've had our mailbox has, we've had some thieving from our mailbox, our locked secure mailbox. So if you are mailing a check, please mail it to this address that's on your screen right now. That's also been in other communications, so you can find it there. If you're dropping off a check, office hours are Monday mornings and then Tuesday and Thursday, 8 to 4. So please enjoy an offertory played by the amazing Sara, and then we'll continue with our prayers.